Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and City Council. Clay Massey, I'm with the law firm of Olson & Bird. I'm here on behalf of the Atlanta Athletic Club. The club, I'll call it for short, the Atlanta Athletic Club, has been in Johns Creek for almost 60 years. We're proud of our involvement in the community, and we're also proud of the community's involvement in our membership and in our leadership. And that has been for a long period of time. Our partnership in the community has involved collaboration and the use of our facilities and our properties, our involvement in the community generally, and also on the national stage, and providing a platform through the PGA Championship for showcasing Johns Creek nationally. That's why what's happening with our property in this process and the proposal is so surprising and disturbing. We have a property directly across the street from us, which is the Heisman Field property. It's 77 acres. It's currently under the current comp plan designated as a distinctive area. And that distinctive area designation contemplates expressly that it is its future land use incorporates a mixed-use residential, mixed-use commercial, and mixed-use retail. In this process, unilaterally, the city is seeking to change that designation when nothing has changed. Nothing has changed with the property, nothing has changed with the surrounding area. And without engaging us at all, without involving us at all in this process, the original proposal was to very explicitly change our future land use designation to a recreational public for the express contemplation of making this a public park. We voiced concern and opposition to that through the club's attorney, Doug Dillard, and in response to that, going into the Planning Commission hearing, it was changed, the designation was changed to undeveloped, meaning that the future land use would be none. It would be undeveloped. We appeared at the Planning Commission and opposed that. And in response to that, now what we have is a recommendation and a proposal to limit any future land use to what its current use is, which is an AG1, 1 unit or less density, which is the lowest density that the city has. And all of this without involving us at all in the process. No one reached out to us and say, hey, we value our partnership in the community. And guess what? We're planning to do this to your property and the future land use planning that's currently happening in the city. A total lack of engagement of us, which is uncharacteristic, we believe, of our long-term relationship. To change what has been the future land use designation for our property for 10 years, to just change it without our involvement, to basically deprive us of an economical use of our property. It's also wrong from a planning perspective because, as contemplated for 10 years, this was a transitional area leading to a more intensive use of what currently exists at State Bridge Road and Medlock Bridge Road. So from a planning perspective, this is wrong. The elephant in the room, I think everybody would acknowledge, is what happened a few years ago with Brand Properties. And I think if anybody had engaged us in this discussion, if anybody had talked to us as part of deciding what to do with our property as part of this planning process, they would have learned that we learned a lot from that process, and we don't intend to go down that road again. But no one ever talked with us. Our request, and what should happen, is that the future land use designation of our property should remain the same as it currently is. Now, you've eliminated distinctive area from the character areas, future land use areas that are provided in the comp plan. Well, we should have what the equivalent is under the current proposed comp plan, which we believe is a mixed use, low intensity, which will provide the same type of mixed use allowances or guidance for the rezoning decision-making that would occur with respect to our property under the current plan. This would not, as the staff has commented, allow us to develop the property at a density of 616 residential units on the property. As you know, this is a future land use designation. For us to develop the property for a mixed-use purpose, we have to get the property rezoned. So we would be back before you with a plan that you would evaluate, both from density and a mix of uses perspective, to decide whether to grant that rezoning. This does not eliminate that from the process. Also, we are not going anywhere. We're right across the street from this property. So we have our own interest in ensuring that there's a development right across the street from us that complements the club, that doesn't complicate the experience of our members and their guests. And we have no incentive to go down a road that leads to an improper and irresponsible development. We're looking to collaborate with the city on this, something that has been missing from this process so far from the city's end. So we're asking to keep it the same. If it's going to change, we're asking that the City Council provide us a directive, to give a directive to the staff to meet with us, to actually sit down and engage a dialogue for once, so that we can come up with some collaborative, if it's going to be different, future land use plan for our property. Something that doesn't unilaterally eliminate an economical use of our property, something that doesn't unilaterally deprive us of our property and constitutional rights, and something that doesn't disregard our relationship, something that we at least had believed was important and valuable to both sides, both the club and the city. So we ask that the plan is currently stated with respect to our property be denied, and that a change be made to keep the future land use consistent with what it actually is right now. And if it's going to change, that we have the opportunity that the staff sit down with us to discuss what that would be. Thank you.
Mr. Benson.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, thank you for this time. First, let me say I admire your stamina. I don't think I could do this on a regular basis. And I'm not going to repeat all the things that, first, I'm a resident of the Prestwick neighborhood. Live 9195 Prestwick Club Drive. I'm a member of the athletic club. Currently serve on the board of directors, on the executive committee, and serve as treasurer. I'm not going to repeat the things that Mr. Massey said. He's done a very nice job of articulating. I am going to highlight just a couple of things because as a member and also a resident, my home is within 50 yards of Heisman Field. So I would feel and know and understand the impact. And in fact, I had the opportunity to work with Ms. Sanders 5 years ago or so in opposition to the plan that had been presented by Brand Properties, and that the club was looking at that time to sell the property. You know, and so I worked on it, very familiar with it. I know and understand how the residents of the surrounding neighborhoods feel. I think our club learned a tremendous amount during that period of time as well. In fact, I do not believe, and we never got to a vote, but I do not believe that the members would approve the sale of that property under the plans that had been presented. So this was something that we learned an awful lot about with the plans and ideas and expectations of the neighbors, the city, but also our membership. And so, as Mr. Massey said, we live across the street. We're not going to be changing and doing something that will impact the neighborhood that would disrupt the enjoyment of the Atlanta Athletic Club. I want to highlight just a couple of things. In addition, because we've talked about the relationship, Mr. Massey talked about the relationship of the athletic club with the city. In addition to the things, the things that we've done to welcome the city onto our property, into our facilities, hosting civic and business meetings at our club for non-members. We've done a lot of different things. I would also include, when Ms. Ebert presented the plan earlier, she talked about feedback garnered through the International Festival. Well, that was held on Athletic Club property again, and we've done a lot of different things there, and we appreciate the relationship that we've had with the city, so that's why we did find this to be a bit inconsistent. We currently have no plans at all to sell any or all of the property at Heisman Field. However, as you know, economic situations change, and that's what led to the consideration several years ago as we'd come through the recession, and we had to consider what the alternatives were for the club to sustain our property, to maintain it at the world-class level that we expect it to be. But if we do enter into a situation where we have to look at selling, or if we think that's the right thing to do, we want to be able to realize the value that's appreciated and that that is accumulated over the years that we've held the property. A change in designation for this property from its current characterization to residential of up to 1 unit per acre would have a serious financial impact on the club. And as Mr. Massey said, arbitrarily and without other things changing. So, and I know you're concerned about the type of development. We all are too. I think we've addressed that, and I feel confident that we can work together with the city. So we appreciate the action that you took during the working session and announced here as well to defer action on this comprehensive land use plan until later in July. We look forward to the opportunity to work with the city, the staff, and the council to come up with a solution that we believe can be beneficial to us as well as to the city of Johns Creek. Thank you.
Council, the floor is yours. Do you wish to have any further discussion tonight on this item? I'll remind the council this will be on the work session of July 9th, as well as a public hearing scheduled for the council meeting. And again, it will be on the work session on the 23rd.
Yes, sir.
With a designation of action to be taken in a public hearing again on the 23rd. That doesn't mean action will be taken. It'll just be designated that way. Further discussion at this time?
Well, I don't really want to discuss, but I do want to take just a moment to thank Ms. Ebert publicly. I think this started out in a certain way that I will say within the consultants were there was not the most favorable. I'd like to thank the CAC members because I think they rejected that, what was happening. They weren't comfortable with it. Sharon, I think you heard that, and I think you took it upon yourself. If I'm not mistaken, you might have been a staff of 1 at that time, 4, but it went down to 1 or so at that time. And you really heard the community, and the more we have seen lately, you've been listening to our community. You've incorporated, even with the text amendments, you incorporated the comments that you heard tonight into that. And I thank you, because I think this council wants to hear the public. But I know you personally listened to the CAC. They weren't comfortable with that, and you heard it. And I know Kimberly helped at the time, and all the staff. So it's not just you. I thank the whole staff, and I can't name them all, because you basically rewrote this plan, and you did listen. The CAC wasn't comfortable putting their names on it, and they wanted input too. And I think after, a 3-day charrette, I know you reached out to, there were multiple outreaches, so I don't know who that included. We had 16 CAC meetings. We had 9 community meetings. Another rewrite. We've had plenty of opportunity for input. And I appreciate the fact that you've done that. And I think it's special. I know your staff has been working extremely hard. I think the CAC members who, not all of them could stay, it wasn't signed up for a 2-year deal. It was supposed to be 5 meetings. And so for the ones that stayed abreast, thank you, because you do care about this community. Jay, you can add anything afterwards. The ones that couldn't make every meeting, I think, were still involved. They were on everything, so hopefully they had input too. But it's something that it's probably not a perfect document yet, and I think there's some changes that will be made, and I look forward to my fellow council members adding some input. But I just wanted to thank you personally, because I know you and the rest of the staff, I know Kimberly at the time too, busted your tails, and so that's pretty incredible. And I think the committee, I think you listened to them. I think this committee loudly said that they want to remain a premier residential community. I think the actions have showed that, and I think they did notice that there were areas for growth. And you need to have some areas for growth, in my humble opinion. And I think this plan gives a good mix of that. And I look forward to getting this passed in whatever form it is, and I look forward to some future things. And I know you're going to work hard on that too, and I know you have a good background on that with some of the master planning that I think needs to be done. So from the bottom of my heart, and I'm going to speak on behalf of council, thank you so much, and on behalf of the community, and to the CAC members who stayed in it, and not to everyone who did it, but particularly those who really stayed in it for 2 years. It was a big undertaking. I felt like it was my responsibility, so I didn't really have a choice, but there was a lot of work, and a lot of people attended all those meetings. So thank you for trying to get the input. We didn't get as much as we wanted, but we certainly had opportunities for input, and I know that was important, and maybe we have some more input to do. I don't know, but I just want to take a few minutes, and I'll probably do it again at the next meeting, because at 12 o'clock, probably not many people are watching. But thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I wanted to make sure we recognize that, and to the CAC members. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Jay.
Yes, I do want to add, also want to go on record to thank Ms. Eber, and also all the CAC members who participated through this process. And I think there's no shortage of very passionate discussion in our meetings. But after all, I believe that at the end, we came up with the plans that we know it's not perfect, like a lot of people say, it's not perfect, but I think we have come up with the plans that the best way we know how. And I think all the members, that if they knew it's a meeting of 18 months commitment and 16 meetings, I think at the end they'll do it again, because I just see the passion from people who care about our city, and they do want to give the most and to participate in this process. So, Ms. Eber, thank you again. We should do that again,
I think we will, Jay. And the one thing I wanted to add too, Sharon, because I know you have, and I know the CAC members have been very, maybe they don't want to be done, but they have also wanted to give input on the process, so the next time this comes around, this is even a better process. And so I do thank both you and the committee for actually wanting to take the time to even give more input. But yeah, we can do this again. Let's hopefully it won't be at midnight the next time. And I'll see if you guys have any comments. I may have one or two questions, but see what anyone else has to say.
I'm just going to echo what they said.
I want to thank all the individuals who came to speak. From my perspective, not responding, it's one way, and I apologize for that. There's a lot of homework that I need to do, and so I don't want you to take away that I'm not saying anything as if I didn't hear you. So I thank you all for coming. I thank you for staying, because it is late, and I know that you all sat through the entire meeting to give that public comment, and I recognize that and appreciate that, and want you to know that I'm going to take your comments and look at the document and become more educated, and hopefully we can make the document a little bit stronger as we give input. But it's been it's a great starting point. It's a great document. I can't say there are changes. It's not, I don't know enough about it, but I do want to thank the CAC and all the staff for having gone through this process for almost 2 years. When people originally commit their time, they didn't think they'd be doing this long. So, as well as the residents who followed the process all the way through, I thank you.
I want to thank Sharon and the staff for a different reason. Not that I don't agree with everything that everyone said. I've looked at a lot of documents in 12 years. Hell, I looked at a lot of documents prior to the 12 years beginning, as we were in the Governor's Commission timeframe. I don't think we've had a more usable document, both website and document, than this. And if that isn't a reflection of where we've come, and if that isn't a reflection of exceptionalism, I don't know what is. So thank you. I've listened. We're not done. We have a lot more of this process to go. I think that sometimes you have to actually have a document to react to it. It's hard sometimes to give input in the abstract. And so it's not that in any way I discount the prior 2 years, but I'm also not going to discount the forward however long, because I think because this document is so usable, people can now react to it. And so I'm appreciative of tonight's comments and the comments that were made at the Planning Commission, and I'm even more appreciative of the comments that will continue to be made as we work through this process. It's not perfect, and it won't be perfect when we're done, but it will get better. And the reason I know it'll get better is because we've got a great document for people to react to. And so again, I'll thank you, Sharon, to your team, and to the CAC for forcing this to become a reality. So any other discussion at this time?
I just had one question. I don't know if it's from Ms. Ebert or our attorney, Mr. Bennett. So talk to me, because I know we've had a couple of things, and I just want to end on this because I want to ponder through it, because now maybe it's because it's midnight and I'm not thinking straight. But we did have discussions on transitional areas and all that, and we're not having them. So can you just speak to that real quick, briefly, so I can take away from this? Because, you know, I want to be, we obviously want to be good partners to everybody, but we also want to do the will.
So in the very beginning of, let's say, the second part of the process of coming back and revisiting this, there was strong feelings from many of the CAC members, if not all of them, that the terminology, whether it's distinctive or formerly before that transitional, was just too vague. And as Ms. Sanders pointed out, when you take zoning cases before you and it says it's transitional and it could be this or it could be that, they really wanted to pin things down. They didn't want any kind of vagueness in there. And so we particularly went through literally parcel by parcel throughout the entire city, and where we felt there was going to be development pressure, we brought those parcels to the CAC meeting, and we had deliberate debates and discussions about what the desired was for any particular area in the city. And so this particular future land use map tried to reflect that input that we received from the various CAC members.
Lenny, I also would like to point out, because I was here for the original designation, and I want to be careful with my choice of words, but again, sometimes it's hard to convey things without being a little blunt. Transitional really didn't mean anything. It just meant that we couldn't decide at the time what the heck was going to happen in the future on these parcels. Folks have implied rights into that, and the only thing I can say is I don't know that there was anything implied by it other than the fact that we didn't know what the heck was going to happen. I'm not diminishing anything that was said about Heisman Field or the 6 properties along State Bridge Road or any of the other, I think there were 2 or 3 other transitional areas that were designated. It's interesting because here we sit 12 years later, and I'm not sure any of those transitional properties, with the exception of Dean Gardens, have transitioned. And even
Bell
Dean
Road and McGinnis.
did transition. Oh, yeah. Yes, it did. So I think it's important that we just carefully work our way through those types of things. At the end of the day, again, the greatest rights that are conveyed to someone are those that happen through what happens around them. And so you can't be less than that. And anything more than that is at the will of council. And the community, of course. Any other discussion tonight on this? Okay. Madam Clerk? And I apologize. I do need to inform the council that I have a situation at home, and I know we have 2 more items on the agenda, but I will have to depart. So I will pass the gavel to Council Member, or to our Mayor Pro Tem.